I'm happy to be reading from my favorite chapter of the Bible again today. It's 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verses 3 through 8. If I give all I possess to the poor and give over my body to hardship that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud. It does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. But where there are prophecies, they will cease. Where there are tongues, they will be stilled. Where there is knowledge, it will pass away. This is the word of the Lord.
Would you bow with me for a prayer? Father, with the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable to you, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. So we're talking about love today. We are in week 2 of our Impact series. Our entire fall, we're talking about 4 things: hospitality, love, discipleship, and challenge. And we're looking at those through the lens of biblical characters. So today we're talking about Paul and Corinthians. But as we begin, I'd like to start with the story, and let me just tell you, this is a long one, so be comfortable. So Stephanie and I had moved to San Antonio about 6 months, and for the first time since we moved here, my in-laws came to visit. That's funny in itself. But even then, so it was a Saturday night. They were coming for the weekend, and about 9:30, I was just thinking about getting ready to go to bed, and my father-in-law comes to me and goes, "Patrick, I need to go to Walmart." And I'm like, "Okay, Kent," that's his name, "what do you need?" And he's like, "I need to go to Walmart." I was like, "Yes, but if you need something, we might have it here, or there's other stores that are a little closer than Walmart." He's like, "No, I need to go to Walmart." I was like, "Okay." Well, let me get my shoes and grab my keys, and I ran into Stephanie as I was getting ready to go. I'm like, "Hey, do you need anything from Walmart? We're going." And she's like, "What are you getting?" And I was like, "I don't know." And so we went to Walmart, and I got a buggy, we got in, and he was used to following me because I know how Walmart here is laid out. So he was just kind of standing next to me, and we kind of walked along. And I'm like, "Okay, you have to go because I don't know where we're going in Walmart." And finally, I'm like, "Okay, Kent, what do we need to get?" He's like, "We got to go to the toiletries area." So we go to the shampoo area. I'm like, "What are we getting?" He's like, "Oh, I forgot my toothbrush." And my grip on the buggy just tightens. I have toothbrushes unopened at my house. We keep them for guests. But that's okay. So he grabs a toothbrush, and I was like, "So do we need to go anywhere else?" He's like, "Yeah, we need to go to Sporting Goods." I was like, "Okay, what are we getting from Sporting Goods?" He's like, "Well, you have a tennis court close to your house that you have access to, so I was going to get some rackets." I'm like, "Oh, okay, great." He's a big tennis guy, so that makes sense. So we get a couple of tennis rackets and a tube of tennis balls. And I'm like, "Okay, Kent, are we all good?" He's like, "No, I need to go to the game section." And I'm like, "The board games?" He's like, "No, the video games." And I should tell you this now, I'm not a video game person. I really haven't been since high school. So I'm like, "Okay," so we're walking to that section. I'm like, what are we getting in the video game section? He's like, "Well, do you remember last year where the kids played the dance game?" And I was like, "Yes, it's called Think You Can Dance, and it's on Xbox." He's like, "Yeah, we're getting that." And my first thought was, I don't have an Xbox. And so I said, "I don't have an Xbox." He's like, "Yeah, we're getting one." And at that moment, I was torn. The part of me that was a father and a husband who said, "Okay, I can't walk home on a Saturday night with an Xbox with a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. Stephanie is going to be really mad." And then there was a part of me that was still a high school boy who said, "Xbox, yes." So we got there, and I thought it was still a misnomer because I thought as soon as he saw the prices for Xboxes. He was just gonna like, no, never mind. I had no idea they were that much. But he walked in and he started asking me questions about Xboxes. And I have friends who are gamers, so I know about the difference between Xbox 360 and Xbox One and all those things. So I was answering all his questions, and finally he just stops me and goes, which one's the best one to get? And I was like, well, Xbox One is the newer one, and it still plays Xbox 360 games, and they're developing more games for Xbox One, so Xbox One's the better one, but it's more expensive. He's like, no, get it, right? Oh, yeah, I see people shaking their heads. You don't agree? Are you a 360 fan out there? Okay, all right. We'll agree to disagree, okay? So we have an Xbox One in the cart. He's like, are we ready to go? I said, well, we have to get the game if you want them to be able to dance. And so he's like, okay, how much are the games? And I was like, okay, they're over here. And I thought for certain he was going to see how expensive the games were, and he was going to say, call the whole thing off. Didn't even blink. Grabbed the game, threw it in the cart. Well, actually, we had to get the guy to unlock the thing, and then we put the game in the cart. And then he's like, do you want a game? And I'm like, no. Because I already knew I was in trouble as soon as I got home. So I get home, and I'm like, okay, can I set this up in the morning? He's like, no, I need it done tonight. And it was already like getting close to 11. So we set it up. We had to update it. We had to get everything aligned for the Connects system. Anyhow, it was about 2 o'clock in the morning before I went to bed, and of course, church was happening the next day. So it was a long day. So the week after that, I was speaking to one of my mentors, and I was telling him this story about the Xbox and setting it up and how I thought it was really strange, and he just shook his head and says, no, that totally makes sense to me. I was like, what made sense about that? And he's like, it's simple. To your father-in-law, the more extravagant the gift, the more extravagant the love. He wanted to get them something that was beyond normal because he wanted to show them that love. And moreover, he wanted to show them love that they could use and value even when he wasn't there. When he went back to Tulsa, he wanted them to play that game and remember that their grandfather loved them. And then I got it. So today, we're talking about love, and we're talking about Paul's letter to the 1 Corinthians, which is used in about half of the weddings here in the States as a verse that people read. But we need to talk about it because Paul wasn't writing it to people who were just waiting for a reception. He was writing it to a church. So we need to know about the church. We need to know about the city of Corinth. So let's talk about Corinth real fast. Corinth was a kind of unique city in Paul's circles. It had two harbors which made it a central place for trade in the area. So a lot of money was changing hands. And because a lot of money was changing hands and a lot of tourists and a lot of people who were coming there who didn't live there, there was a thriving entertainment, hotel, and restaurant industry. Moreover, because there was a lot of money happening there, there was a lot of temples there. There was over 100 temples. And between you and me, some of the pagan temple worship practices were not PG or PG-13 rated. You guys understand? Okay, let's leave it there. Okay? So what I'm saying is this, is Corinth was the Vegas of its day. So what happens in Corinth stayed in Corinth. You understand what I'm saying? It's the way it is, okay? And there was a church there too. And that church was part of the culture in Corinth as well. Now, like a lot of the churches that Paul visited, it was a converted synagogue. But there was a division. It was a divided church. Because it was living in a multicultural, multi-religious city, many of the believers in the church and the leaders in the church thought it was customary and okay for others to bring their worship practices to worship God. They thought that God was a universal God. Therefore, you could bring your worship practices from other gods and from your native religion and use those as long as they didn't conflict with biblical law. And others in the church said, no, we need to keep this more on just Jewish and Christian worship practices. And then in that church, basically they were valuing kind of the more glamorous parts of the service. They were, oration, knowledge, prophecy, and tongues had high places in the church. So as Paul was writing them, he needed something to unify them, something that would be non-negotiable for them, something that would bring them together as a church, but also allow them to differentiate themselves from the rest of the city and reach out to the rest of the city. So he chose to talk to them about love. Now, biblical scholars disagree on how Paul is talking here. Some believe that he is just as the mind goes, just saying all the things that love is not like, and then all the things that love is like in just a stream of consciousness order. And then others believe that he put structure on this. That verses 1 through 3 talks about the primacy of love. Verses 4 through 7 talk about the perfection of love. And 8 through 18 talks about the permanence of love. Now, what they all agree upon is that Paul uses the word for love, agape. So let's take a brief moment to talk about the 4 different types of love. Some of you might have taken this study in the past. In the translation from Greek to English, there are 4 words that are commonly translated as love: agape, storge, phileo, and eros. Eros is a sensual, sexual type love. Phileo is a brotherly love. Storge is a family or familiar love. And then there's agape. Now, some biblical scholars believe that some biblical authors use agape, storge, and phileo almost interchangeably. But Paul is not one of those biblical authors. When Paul uses the word agape for his conversation about love, he uses it with intensive purpose. So let's talk about agape love. It is known as the highest, noblest form of love. It is a love that does not care about family bonds. It doesn't care about what a person looks like or where their status is in social circles. It is a love that is self-sacrificing. It is a love for all. It is an universal love, or an unconditional love is what we're talking about. It is the love of all people, and some even believe it is the love of all things. That's the love that Paul is talking about when he uses the word over and over, agape. Now, here's where I'm going to go out on a limb. And feel free to disagree with me on this, because I'm not even 100% certain that I believe this, but this is where my mind's at now, is that I believe that we as humans have no capacity to generate agape love from our own being. That we as humans don't have the ability to actually produce agape love from our own heart. Phileo, storge, eros, I think we can do those. Agape, I think, is something different. I believe that agape love is only a reflection of God's love in us that we can then share and show to the world. Because agape love is tough. It is hard, and I believe it's rare. Agape love sees the worst in itself and the best in everybody else. Agape love washes dirty, gross feet and feels honored by the process. So why are we talking about agape love as it adheres to Northern Hills Church? We're talking about it because, just like for the Corinthians, it's a love that can unify us as a body and believers, as a community, and it's also what differentiates us from the community outside and allows us to reach that same community outside. Agape love is a tool and something that we can use to reach our neighbors and our friends and the people we work with. We live in a city that's not unlike Corinth, multicultural, multi-religious city. And even us as a church, we're a church of different languages and different ethnic groups. We are a lot of the ways like the church in Corinth. And so just like as Paul talks to them, we can use those words of love. I want to talk to you guys and give you guys a quote from a guy named N.T. Wright. Now, N.T. Wright, he's Anglican, he's British, and he is a beast when it comes to theology. He's just amazing. I didn't put this quote on the screen because it's really long, but I wanted to read it to you. The church must be working in the presence of the things that will last into God's future. Faith, hope, and love will do this. Prophecy, tongues, and knowledge, so highly prized in Corinth, will not. They are merely signposts to the future. When you arrive, you no longer need a signpost. Love, however, is not just a signpost. It is a foretaste of the ultimate reality. Love is not merely the Christian's duty, it is the Christian destiny. What I think Wright is saying here is this, that love is not only the means by which we will reach out to our community, it is also the reward for doing so. The more we love, the more love abounds. And the more love abounds, the more people realize that God is love and are brought into Him. So the more we love, the more love grows. And eventually we will pass into the place where love literally surrounds us. But here's my issue. My issue is this. And it's the same one that I think Paul has. In all of his talk about love, Paul never defines it. He simply talks about what love is like and what love is not like. Love, almost as a word, defies explanation. I can't tell you what it is. There's arguments in seminary all the time about what love is. Mostly because it's 85% guys and they have no one to share with. But even then, we argue and we debate about love because we're looking for it. The one thing I can tell you about love is that it's fleeting. Well, it's not fleeting, but the moment to express it is. There was a gentleman, and he got married. And on the day after he got married, he decided that he was done opening the door for his wife. He loved her, he cherished her, but he decided that she has two hands and she is capable. So he loves her, and they go. They have children together, they retire together, and finally she passes on. And after her service, they're wheeling her in her casket to the hearse, and the funeral director, who knew this gentleman, said, "Hey, why don't you open the door for her?" And he goes to grip the handle, but he never makes it. Because all of a sudden he realizes that he had a chance to show just a little bit of love and value to his wife, and never did. And that this time would be the first and the last time since his wedding day that he was going to show this love for his wife. My friends, well, I can't tell you what love is. And I can only read to you and maybe understand the list of things that Paul says love is like and love is not. What I can tell you is that the moments to express love are fleeting. That they can go and pass us by. So my challenge to you and my prayer for you is this, is to decide now or in the next few days through prayer and thinking about how you're going to express agape love and how you're going to try to reflect agape love into the world around you. It's a decision that you make now, because if you have to decide in the moment is gone. Just like my father-in-law, who's wiser than I give him credit for, knows he bought that ahead of time for the times he wasn't there. That's the decision before us. To choose to love, to choose to show love in our communities. Would you bow with me for prayer?